Segment three of MAAC Mania's MAAC Men's Monday here. Thank you for tuning in to episode two of the podcast. Mike Duda, JJ Garcia with you today. That being episode two on the men's side. It's our third overall episode, and let me know about this if you want to change, but I kind of like doing it where we have episode one, two, three, etc. for the men's side and the women's side as well. It feels like it diversifies the two different podcasts. They're the same, they're under the same umbrella, but they are two different podcasts at its heart. Regardless, we will talk storylines here on the men's side. Got to start off with the Warriors. Back to back home overtime wins against Siena and Iona, and it really mattered for them in terms of the standings.
Yeah, it really mattered. They finally got to be at the top of the MAC. They are at the top of the mountain. They have officially clinched the regular season title of the MAC, and this is so huge for them. Their second year under Joe Gallo. He's really just turned this program around and really just helped them stand out, and the fans absolutely love him. If you watch the games, there's fans in the crowd wearing I Love Joe Gallo shirts. He just brings such a big energy to this Merrimack team, and this is just so huge for them. Their win streak is up to 8. Their only two losses were against St. Peter's and Iona. They beat Siena on the U, then took down Iona in double overtime, and this is just such a huge win for this Merrimack team. They are 10-0 at home, and really, it doesn't look like anyone can stop them.
Undefeated 11-0 at Lawler Arena. You mentioned how faithful the fans are. Well, yesterday was not an ESPNU game. Yes, of course, it was a thriller. It was a double overtime game, but the fans, the entire student section was right behind the cheerleaders and the dance team and everybody that was on this side of the court, right on the baseline, ready to storm it when Merrimack inevitably won the game and ready to celebrate that MAC regular season championship. Of course, the one that cut down the net had to be Kaveh Kennedy, their star. This is a team that was picked seventh in the preseason poll, but they always seem to get a victory. And we talk about Iona. And we'll talk about this more when we get to their particular storylines, but they have had such phenomenal head coaches this decade alone. Tobin Anderson was one of my personal favorite coaches. He's known for his upsets with Fairleigh Dickinson University. Rick Pitino, one of the best head coaches in the history of collegiate basketball, was also with the Gales this decade. And now it's in the hands of Dan Giroux, who had NBA coaching experience prior, now brings it to the MAC. This is a storied team, a storied program that always seems to pull off upsets. They did earlier this week against the number 2 seed in St. Peter's. So they're probably saying, hey, why not take down the 1 seed? We already did it this year, but the Warriors stood tall at home, a team that is just coming into the MAC, who were previously in lower conferences. So really, really impressive from the Warriors. We talked about St. Peter's. Let's talk a little bit more about them. They dropped a fellow overtime game at Iona. Then they lost up in the state's capital. So, JJ, I got two questions for you. Do some of the following losses concern you? They lost to Mount St. Mary's, they lost to Ryder, they lost to Sacred Heart, and Iona. Any of those concern you?
Definitely Ryder. This Iona loss doesn't scare me too much just because of how Iona has been playing recently, but the short story is yes, these losses are concerning me. It's back-to-back losses. It's towards the end of the year. I've highlighted this in both the first and second episode. Confidence and momentum heading into the MAC tournament and the final weeks of the season are the biggest thing in basketball. Having that confidence, having that momentum is so huge in so many different facets between your players, between your team, between your coaches, in everything. And St. Peter's, they're struggling right now. Obviously, they will take on Marist next Sunday, but this is really concerning for me. You need that momentum. You need a few wins under your belt heading into the MAC tournament, and they don't have that right now. They've dropped two straight games at critical times, and they're trending downwards, and that's something that's really scary for this St. Peter's team. Obviously, that Iona loss isn't too scary because of how good Iona has been recently, but there's a lot of red flags around the St. Peter's team right now.
I think another one is the away record. Seemingly, their talent only comes at Run Baby Run Arena, where they're 12-1 and undefeated in MAC play. But here's my second question for you, JJ. Do you trust the Peacocks 3-10 away record, which is 3-6 in conference play?
No, I don't trust it at all. I This is so concerning. The road wins are so huge when you're heading into the MAC tournament. It's at a neutral site. It's somewhere you've never been before. And you don't know how many of your fans are going to travel. Obviously, a good amount will probably travel to Atlantic City, but that is so concerning. Seeing 3-10 on the road is something you really don't want to see as a coach, as a player on this team. And obviously, as a player, you're not thinking about that. But as a spectator, as someone who's watching the game, that is so incredibly daunting. And they will play Fairfield on the road very soon, which that'll be a very telltale game. If they can somehow win that game, that'll be huge for them. But in all honesty, that is very, very scary if I'm the St. Peter Peacocks.
You talked about how they're unfamiliar with Jim William Boardwalk Hall. Technically, the answer is no, but when you look at this particular bunch, most of them have never played down in Atlantic City because the sophomores on this squad didn't even make the tournament last year, and thus they were picked 11th in the preseason poll, just in front of the Buffalo schools. Now, very impressive that they are second in the conference this year, but it really is carried by that home record. So a lot of red flags for St. Peter's heading into the tournament. In my opinion, a lot of green flags for the third place team, that being the Siena Saints. An overtime loss at Merrimack on the U, and then a win against St. Peter's. I think Siena is the second best team in the conference behind Merrimack. I don't know if you agree, JJ, but that's what I'm thinking.
100%. I agree with you completely. They're in four at home, 9-6 on the road, which is big for them. They played a great game against Merrimack, then beat St. Peter's. This is a very, very good Siena team, and they've just been playing great basketball. They obviously beat Marist on the road by 4. They did lose to Quinnipiac and St. Peter's before that, but they were on a huge 6-game win streak before that loss to St. Peter's about 2 weeks ago, and Gavin Doherty is leading this team. Schultz is absolutely electric. This is probably easily the second best team in the MAC based on just their raw talent, how they've been playing, how they can play on the road, and just in general, this team is very complete. They control the tempo. They are very, very disciplined on the defensive end, which is huge going into tournament play against these bigger teams. And really, they might be the most balanced team in the league right now over this Merrimack team. I think all around, defensively, offensively, they are the most balanced team in this conference.
Quick note on the Warriors. Kavere Kennedy, we're going to talk about him later. Seemingly, like I said earlier, a one-for-one fit for Bud Clark, who is not only at a Big East school, but he's playing really well at a Big East school in the Seton Hall squad. So impressive. Let's talk about Marist. Two impressive wins for them. Two must wins, I would say. They go on the road to Draddy Gymnasium. They take care of Manhattan, and then they please the home crowd with a comeback victory over Sacred Heart. Hopefully for them, they will avoid Siena slash St. Peter slash Merrimack in the first round of play if they take care of business against the Peacocks. That'll be on ESPNU on Sunday. They will need some help for that as well around the league. So if you're a Red Sox fan, and we'll dissect this more on Friday, but you're rooting for particular squads. Now, the first round is clinched, but if I were them, I'd hope to avoid that 6 seed and play either Quinnipiac, Fairfield, maybe the Mount, or even a team that's outside of the top 6 if you climb to that number 2 spot. The reason why I say you don't want to claim that 6 seed is because if you do, you're probably playing one of the aforementioned Siena, St. Peter's, because Merrimack is already at the 1 and you can't have two teams split second place. So it's either going to be Siena in the 2, St. Peter's in the 3, or vice versa, which means if you get the 6, you're going to play one of them. But if you get above the 6, meaning 3 through 5, and that's very likely for Marist, you might have a favorable matchup in the quarterfinals, which will propel you to the semifinals. Of course, they were upset last year by the Mount, ended the season on a 5-game skid and were eliminated in those quarterfinals. So it'd be big for them to get past the quarterfinals. You got to talk about Justin Menard and John Dunn, though. A 30 bomb from the sophomore, and then John Dunn, like JJ mentioned earlier, becomes the winningest head coach in MAC history with 266 victories. But of course, JJ, Menard got outed by Kavere Kennedy, who had a 32-point performance that night against a seemingly better squad. So not like his performance is mute, but it almost goes mute.
Yeah, it kind of does go mute in a sense because Kavere Kennedy is just so explosive. Obviously, that was an ESPNU game where Kavere Kennedy did drop 32 points against that Siena team, so that's huge. But that doesn't throw it under the rug how good Justin Menard has been in these last two games. Obviously, 30 points, then 22 points. He hit a huge three-pointer down the stretch against Sacred Heart with just 19 seconds remaining. He was fired up. This team is playing so well together. They were without Jason Schofield last night and still pulled away with the win against the Sacred Heart team. And they were two huge resilient wins. Obviously, against the Sacred Heart team, they were down 10 in both halves. They went on 14-0 run, a 15-0 run in the second half. Huge runs for them. They've been playing great. Obviously, last week, I had a lot of concerns. I thought the same thing that happened last year was happening this year. They were on a three-game losing streak. I was scared they were going to go on this five-game skid again into the tournament, but they said absolutely not. They beat Manhattan by 14, then beat Sacred Heart in a nail biter by two. Now they'll play St. Peter's on ESPNU. This Mariners team really finding their stride late into the season. And we have to highlight this defense, the sixth best scoring defense in the country. That is absolutely insane. They also have the second best three-point percentage against. So teams only shoot 27% from the three-point line against them this year, which is second best in the country. Sean Dunn really making a great defense around this team, but then Justin Menard and Rajon Blackwell leading this way for this offense.
You mentioned those guards. Not only are they really good on the offensive side of the ball, but they've picked up their defensive game, which I think is so important. Menard, a tone setter. You saw him with Iona last year. If you're a MAAC fan, ends up going to the MAAC finals where the Gales inevitably fall to the team that would go on to win an NCAA tournament game in Mount St. Mary's. But let's move over to Hamden. Quinnipiac lost at home against Merrimack and then also played at home against Fairfield and dropped that one just 49 points against the Warriors. And then that loss to their Connecticut counterpart. JJ, are you concerned about the team that was picked as the MAAC preseason favorite and the team that had the MAAC preseason player of the year in Amari Monroe?
Yes and no. The reason I say yes and no is because we know how good this Quinnipiac team can be. Obviously, they're the preseason team of the year, player of the year as well. They did go on a stretch of beating Fairfield, Canisius, Niagara, and Siena. They close out the year playing Niagara and Canisius, which should be confidence boosters. The one concern I will have is Amari Monroe. He hasn't been we've seen him have before. Obviously, that doesn't throw away his season because he is playing incredible 8 rebounds, but it's not the normal season we've expected from this Quinnipiac team or Amari Monroe in general. And it's almost seeming like they can't find their stride. They'll go on winning streaks here and there, and then they'll just lose about three in a row. And they just can't seem to beat these top teams. And that is a little concerning for me. They are 5 games back from the lead. Obviously, they can't get the one seed and they can't really go farther than that. But it's a bit concerning in the sense that they can't seem to beat these top teams. Obviously, they've lost to St. Peter's, they've lost to Merrimack, they've lost to Marist, they've lost to Sacred Heart, they've lost to Fairfield, they've lost to all of these top teams and can't seemingly find a way to beat them. And that does raise a lot of red flags for me, but we also know what this team is capable of. They can beat a team like Merrimack, they can beat a team like Marist, they could beat Fairfield, they could beat really anyone in this league. And that's something that's so special about this team. They could kind of fly under the rug heading into the tournament and then make a lot of noise.